All right. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to yet another episode of the Herbalist Hour. You're joining me here live from the back of my truck in Eugene, Oregon, and today's guest is Athena Wolf, and Athena's an herbalist, of course, and I'm excited to get to know her a little bit better. So, welcome to the show, Athena.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you and your audience.
Of course, yeah, no, I'm excited to hear more about some of your early influences, some of your early teachers, and just to get to know you a little bit better. So yeah, so let's kind of start things off by how did you get introduced into the healing world of plants, and how did you become an herbalist?
Well, I think part of it is when I was a child, I always asked questions, why and how. And I would have liked to become a physicist, but my math skills are not up to par. I began studying Western herbalism when I was in my teens. When I was 18, I married and we bought 20 acres of land in Ohio, where I found bloodroot, sassafras, ginseng, and many other herbs. And I invited other people to tour this wonderful piece of untouched forest. And I think that might have been the beginning of my career as an herbalist. We joined an ashram when I was 19, and I began doing Kundalini yoga for 4 or 5 hours a day and studying Ayurveda. As you may know, Ayurveda is a very complex and sophisticated healing system. So I spent years, and that's typical, coming to understand the philosophy of it before approaching the therapies. A couple of weeks before the birth of our fourth child, their father took off. So I had to do something more lucrative to support the 5 of us. And actually, I had to do a lot just to keep the electricity and water on, because I was almost always paid less than the men who were doing the same job that I did. You know, I actually asked my boss at a radio station where I was working why he did that. And he said, that's because men have a family to support. And I told him, you know, I'm a single mother supporting 4 children. And he just shrugged his shoulders.
Wow.
So this is something I think many women, whether they're herbalists or not, encounter to this day. So I tried to have one job where I could take my children with me, as I was working 60 to 80 hours a week to support us all. And I began putting myself through college, and I took them to my college classes as well. They learned a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're probably really smart.
Yeah. So while I supported us as a technical writer, safety trainer at a national laboratory, and also the liaison officer for State Department, I continued my studies in Ayurveda for 26 years. And it's been 50 years now. I'll be 70 in Cinco de Mayo. And I'm still learning, although I am currently writing an encyclopedic book on Ayurvedic therapies, because I feel that that's something that most people don't address. And as a practicing Veda for a couple decades, I have a lot of case histories and knowledge about that. So anyway, after that period of time doing yoga for many hours a day, I felt that I had not progressed on my own spiritual path as much as I expected. Some people in Santa Fe brought the medicine man of the Yaquis, Chora, to town for a talk. Hundreds of people showed up to hear Don Juan speak, and afterwards he picked 20 of us to do what he called a concentration exercise. And then he invited a few of us to study with him in Tecate, Mexico, where he lived. So I would go out there every summer, camp out with the Yaquis and some other tribes, and learn curanderismo from this teacher. A few years later, I also did an apprenticeship in the Peruvian shamanic tradition. And I've been working full-time at my healing practice, using the wisdom of these ancient traditions for about 18 years now. 9 years ago, I started La Escuela de Curanderismo, which quickly became an international school for healers. I still teach that 6 days at a time. So that's some background, I think, of how I became a
Uh,
healer and who
yeah,
what my influences have been.
sure. So I'm curious, you said you're writing this book. Is this going to be your first book then?
Yes, it is.
That's awesome. So, are you getting this published? Are you working with a publisher? Or are you self-publishing this or?
I will not self-publish now.
Okay.
It's going, I actually wrote another book. My husband wanted me to write an autobiography, and I found a publisher right away. I really didn't want to write an autobiography. I didn't feel like, I mean, nobody knows who I am and no one's interested in. Anyway, the whole book disappeared off the hard drive. And I had to tell the publisher that I didn't have it anymore. And we even sent the hard drive to the East Coast to have it analyzed, and they couldn't bring it back. So yeah, that's not technically a book. I doubt that I'll have a problem finding a publisher. I'm a good writer, and this is knowledge that I think a lot of people want. I'm concerned right now with just writing the whole big thing. I'm not worried about publishing it.
I really wish more herbalists would write autobiographies. I think that would just be a really fun and fascinating read. And come to think of it, I don't think I've ever read an autobiography by an herbalist. Have you?
I don't know that I have. No, I don't. Actually, I don't tend to read autobiographies or fiction. I have a background in science, and I tend to only read nonfiction. So that's why this is a passion of mine, to write this manual on Ayurvedic therapies that no one has done, and the whole therapies, not just the herbs, because Ayurveda is a multi-therapy approach to healing, unlike Western herbalism. So I want to put all the therapies in there.
Isn't Ayurveda directly translate to like the study and science of life, or am I getting that right?
That's right. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Ayurveda is the science of life.
when I first started getting into herbalism, this is probably a gateway for a lot of people, but it was traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda is what really fascinated me. I haven't really continued with that study at all. I ended up taking an apprenticeship called the Columbine School of Botanical Studies here in Eugene. So I did kind of learn along the Western herbalism lineage, but yeah, I love Ayurveda. I think it's a beautiful form of herbalism.
It is, and it's, I still grow Western herbs and use them. I mean, on our property here in the Southwest, I grow mullein, mugwort, elderberry, white sage, lavender, cayenne. We're growing sesame to make sesame oil. A lot of people don't realize that sesame is a desert plant. And in Ayurveda, sesame is considered medicinal. We use it a lot.
What am
Aloe
I? What's that one thing where they do the oil swishing in their mouth? Is that's uses sesame oil, right?
That's correct. How wonderful that you know that. Because like many, many other Ayurvedic therapies, these traditions and this knowledge has been corrupted by some people. And I don't know, maybe I'll mention one of the names is Dr. Mercola, who I think has a lot of good knowledge, but I remember an article he wrote where he talked about oil pulling and that it did come from Ayurveda, so he gave it credit. And he cited the studies done that shows it's beneficial with sesame oil. And at the end of the article, he said, but I like the taste of coconut oil better, so I'm going to do that. And so all these people are like, oh yes, we'll just use coconut oil. But it's not the same thing. Sesame oil is very good at eliminating bacteria, and better than coconut oil, although coconut oil does somewhat. Anyway, that's not an herb, but that's one of the considered Western herbs that I grow, and it's actually comes from the Middle East and India.
I don't know if I caught it, but where are you living nowadays?
We are in New Mexico, right next to the Gila Wilderness.
We were actually going to be stopping by. You probably are aware of Wolf and Kiva Hardin. They live in the Gila area. It did not work out because with the 30-foot RV, we were gonna have to like cross all these rivers, and it's pretty wild out there, I hear. But one of these days, I'd like to check out the Gila National Forest. Going back to the whole sesame versus coconut oil, I haven't heard the name Dr. It's Mercola, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
I remember when I was first getting into nutrition, I would see his videos all the time, and that thing, but I haven't heard his name in a long time. But I'm not a scientist or a chemist, or like you're a scientist, but you're right. The nutritional profile is like way different. I think of, isn't like coconut oil like a saturated fat or higher in saturated fat, whereas sesame seed oil is probably not. It's probably just a totally different chemical makeup. So to expect it to do the same thing with the oil pulling, that's just funny.
Well, they're both helpful. Sesame
Sure.
oil is better. I guess as a Vadia, I want to stick to the tradition as it was handed down to me. And there are other traditions that people have taken from and benefited with. Some of those that haven't been beneficial to people because they don't have the training as a Vadia is Shirodhara. I would
Mhm.
say never get Shirodhara from a naturopath. And a lot of naturopaths have tried to adopt these different Ayurvedic therapies because they are so powerful. But you have to have decades of training to do it. So Shirodhara, as you may know, is the dropping of medicated oil on your third eye. And it can be very beneficial for people with a Vata constitution or who are Vata aggravated. It is very detrimental for people who are Pitta. And there's different aspects to it as well. I'm saying it in a very simplistic way, just for right now. But yes, that's one of those things that you need to go to an Ayurvedic physician for, as well as Panchakarma. Panchakarma is an advanced technique, and I see people all over the country offering Panchakarma. It's not just drinking, or it's not just eating khichdi. That's
Mm.
not what Panchakarma is. And there's nothing wrong with eating khichdi, but it's not a cleansing therapy. There's a lot to Panchakarma, and it's based on each person's individual prakriti or constitution and vakriti or current condition.
That's a new term for me. But I have made my fair share of khichdi in my day. Uh,
Khichdi is very healthy and it's easy on your digestion.
sure. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this 4-hour class that you have called Healing Ourselves as We Age, and you utilize Ayurveda and the Herendismo. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes,
Herendismo.
yeah.
And yeah, I just, obviously we don't have 4 hours, but I just kind of, you've obviously aged very gracefully. Happy almost birthday to you, the big 7-0. That's exciting. But I was just curious if you could kind of pull from those two traditions that you've studied, and just kind of give us maybe some tips and tricks on how to also age gracefully.
Well, I have to say that I am not teaching any more workshops.
Okay.
To start with, but I will talk to you about it and what I used to teach. I,
Sure.
with my own healing practice, 40 or 60 hours a week, the School for Healers, and then I'm a director of a nonprofit. I just said that's enough.
Fair.
Yeah, I'm trying to work less and less. Some of the things that I covered in this workshop was how to deal with arthritis and the difference between osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. And there's a lot of different opinions about this, and I think that there are probably many ways to heal from this, even as there are many ways to heal from cancer. One of the ways that I recommend for people with osteoarthritis is drinking golden milk.
Mm.
This is an Ayurvedic recipe for the best medicinal use of turmeric that one of my teachers brought to this country in 1972. I have it on my website under recipes. so that people can just read it and make your own. Organic turmeric is not difficult to come by. The original recipe calls for piper longum, which is we know as pipali, but I think that black pepper or piper nigrum works probably almost as well. And you can add spices to it. If you have high blood pressure, you can add nutmeg, you can add cardamom and cinnamon, and honey after it's cooked. So that's what turmeric does when it's used in this way, is it increases the synovial fluid in your joints. And osteoporosis, of course, that is the problem, that the bones are just rubbing against each other with not enough fluid. Unfortunately, when I was in the ashram, well, I don't know if it's unfortunate. It would have happened anyway. A lot of researchers were coming to us from universities and asking us for these recipes, and not understanding that what researchers do is they work for big pharma. They isolate the most potent part of a plant, synthesize it, and patent the process. So this is where curcumin comes from. Curcumin is made with toxic solvents. It is not as effective as this inexpensive, beautiful, innocent turmeric root. And I know that as a fact because I've treated many people who were taking curcumin, people with breast cancer, for instance, and they found that the golden milk actually reduced their pain and helped them in other ways as well. So I'm going off on a tangent with that.
I love hearing that. And just to chime in real quick, we have a course called the Art of Frugal Nutrition where we try to help teach people how to eat nutritious foods on a budget. And my friend Bevan Clare taught the Spice Apothecary module, where she talked about just common kitchen spices. And I want to say that she said that you could get a medicinal dose of turmeric in your diet for like as little as 2 cents a day. I might just be misremembering, but it was something absurdly cheap. And I could only imagine that if you're buying a bottle of curcumin capsules or something like that, it's going to be way more expensive and just less effective.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I also talk to people in this workshop about heart disease, Alzheimer's, rheumatoid arthritis, enlarged prostate, and hormone imbalance or hormone balance for women. What we've had really good, and also digestive issues. Older people tend to have some digestive issues, and that's been a specialty of mine. I help people with IBS and diverticulitis, Crohn's, all of those. So that's in a nutshell, as you say.
Yeah, I'm guessing you're also incorporating non-herbal remedies such as probably yoga and stuff too.
Yes, in fact, one of the wonderful things that you can do if you have low thyroid, and I do have a very wonderful Ayurvedic formula for low thyroid, but I also give people the yoga for that, which is doing some spinal flexes and then doing plow pose. And plow pose creates a pressure on your thyroid that causes it, that stimulates it. And so that Ayurvedic formula and that yoga pose both stimulate the thyroid back into functioning fully. Whereas when you use synthroid, levothyroxine, and desiccated thyroid, that works in a different way. It replaces your thyroid function so that eventually your thyroid gradually atrophies. And this is not my opinion. I read medical research as a hobby, and this is the results. These are the conclusions that researchers have drawn about the effect. And I'm categorizing desiccated thyroid with the drugs synthroid and levothyroxine because it acts in the same way. So we see people that are taking these.
Am I understanding correctly that you have had a clinical practice over the course of your herbalist career?
Yes, for 18 or 19 years now.
Do you have any advice for running a clinical practice for, say, someone who's either kind of newer at it or are going to become a clinical herbalist?
I do. keep your overhead low.
Good advice.
Herbalists don't tend to make a lot of money. I mean, I charge probably more than most herbalists, but still, I'm not getting rich on it. That's not why I'm doing it. I've made good money doing other things. I'm doing this for the love of it, to see people heal and to improve the health of our community. So yeah, keeping your overhead low in any way you can. This is one way that I did that was I had a free website for these past 17 years. And it's worked out really well for me until they sold the company, and now I have to change my website. So it's up there now as pulindettahealing.com, but I just created a new website that's not quite finished. It's online as Ayurveda and Purandavismo.
Awesome. Well, we'll link to that when it's up and running, but in the meantime, we'll link to your other one. Yeah, honestly, whether you're a clinical herbalist or not, I've always promoted the live as simply and as cheaply as possible. We don't need that much, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, there's keeping your overhead low. I've asked that question to numerous herbalists, and I think you're the first one to actually kind of just say it so simply like that, which, yeah, I can't agree more. So
Well, the way we do it, we're living off grid. We bought
okay.
inexpensive land off grid because most people don't want to live like that. We have small solar system. We have 14 acres. We're growing plants, and yeah, things have worked out really well for us in that way. We're able to live simply. We haven't had a lot of money in the past, and we know how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I could only imagine that it probably makes you a heartier, healthier person living the way you do anyways. So without all the standard modern like city amenities and everything, but you get the nice clean air out there, and yeah, it's probably beautiful.
Well, we really do, and for us, it's a commitment to be good stewards of the earth. And so, what I did was we built a tiny house. It's like, I don't know if it's tiny, it's small, it's 400 square feet. And
Oh
because we
wow.
found that, we've had large houses before, and we find that we're always accumulating things to put in the house,
Sure.
right? So we said, we're just going to live really simply in a small house. My office is larger because I also use it for the School for Healing.
For those just listening, we're getting a virtual tour right now.
There you go. There's part of it. There's some other rooms, but it's a lot larger than our home because, it needs to accommodate more people.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, our house is 950 square feet, which is pretty small. But I looked up the definition of a tiny home, and one person said it's under 1,000 square feet, and I was like, sweet, we got a tiny home, but I guess it just depends on who you ask. Can you tell us about any profound plant experiences that you've had?
Sure, I'd be happy to. This is probably the most profound that I had, and this was, um, the first profound relationship that I've had with a plant. I was caretaking 40 acres in Medinales, New Mexico. There were 4 other gardeners there, but one of them just loved to overwater, and the irrigation system always had pools of water, and there were clouds and clouds of mosquitoes. And I got bit by a mosquito, and I got West Nile virus. And not having much of a blood-brain barrier left from all the injuries to my neck I've had, I developed meningitis. I couldn't walk for like 3 or 4 days, and my daughter broke into the house somehow and carried me out and took me to a doctor. And she said, "Oh, you've had meningitis for a week. You're never going to recover," as doctors tend to do.
Right.
I couldn't walk a straight line. I was still very sick. My brain was very inflamed. And my daughter took me to her house and fed me nettle tea. And then I got better enough that my digestion started working, and she took me back home and walked me up the driveway. And as we did, I heard a little voice that said, "I can help you." And I said, "Gaia, that plant is speaking to me." And my eyes were still blurry. I couldn't see very well. I said, "What is that plant?" And she said, "Oh, Mataji, you know what that is. That's echinacea." And I said, "Yeah." And I picked a leaf and I ate it. And 3 times a day, I would go outside and I ate an echinacea leaf and recovered from viral meningitis, which a
Wow.
lot of people don't know that echinacea will work for viral meningitis, not bacterial meningitis. But that's how I learned. The plant told me. And historically, yes, that is how people have always learned, from plants. Before the advent of Western culture, the plants spoke to us. And since then, other plants have spoken to me, but that was the first time. And I hold that plant in my heart and have gratitude every day that it saved me and other people as well in that way.
That's a good reminder. I feel like we could get so distracted by technology and phones and screens, and then we just get so integrated into city life. I notice anytime I go out in the woods or in nature and just kind of release all of that, I do feel a lot more in tune. And it sounds as if you kind of lived your life this way. You're just kind of in tune with nature and with the plants, to the point where you were able to hear it loud and clear, that echinacea was telling you that it could help. That's pretty incredible.
Well, in Peru, of course, that is expected as an herbalist, that people would hear the plants and you make an icaro or a song about what the plant has told you. And then you can share that knowledge with others through that. So, and I know that that's true in other herbalist, other shamanic traditions as well, that people understand how to listen to the plants. And it's certainly something that I teach others too, because that's the authentic knowledge when the plant speaks to you.
It's pretty cool when you go to an herb conference and you take a class like that, where the whole point is to just go out and they kind of just teach you to sit with the plant, listen to it, see if it's giving you any messages like that. And I remember the first time doing that, it was at the Brighton Bush Herb Conference, and it was actually, I want to say it was with Rosemary Gladstar and Jane Bothwell, and they had us all just kind of sit with plants. And I was like, what am I doing? I'm just kind of getting for the first time, kind of getting involved in this world. And I'm so glad I did, because it makes a lot more sense to me. I can't say I've had the extreme level of communication that you've had, but knowing that it's possible and that it's real is just, yeah, it's very inspirational to me.
And I know that a lot of people have had that experience, but even if you don't, still listening to the plants will give you insight, even if you don't hear the voice. It's a good practice. Listening to the trees. Trees have a lot of wisdom and knowledge. The Maya people called themselves, their name for themselves was the people of the tree.
That's beautiful.
So
Very cool. Well, what is one of the things that you do daily to practice your craft as an herbalist?
what I do daily is pray. I pray for my clients. I give gratitude to spirit and nature, and I balance myself every day before I start. Before I see clients, I open sacred space and I close sacred space afterwards. And these are the energetic practices that allow me to heal people with chronic disease, because that is my specialty, is treating chronic disease, without absorbing people's pain and illness. And from what I've seen, that's something that many herbalists lack, is that understanding of how to protect yourself, how to transform the energy, how to send heavy energies away. And that's, I think, a very crucial part for any clinical herbalist, is understanding how to keep yourself in balance, right? Because it is our balance that is our gift to the world.
Mm. How do you practice creating those boundaries and balance so you're able to better help heal yourself and your clients? Is it through your just daily practice of prayer and that kind of thing, or?
It is. It's also, of course, practicing what I teach. So in Ayurveda, there's a diet for each different constitution, and I have benefited a lot from taking that diet on for myself, as I'm Pitta and the fiery constitution. So yes, that changed my whole personality when I adopted that diet. As far as protecting myself, I think what really helped me was the Peruvian tradition of energy work and the initiations that I had that I now pass on to others that strengthen the electromagnetic field in ways that you can control what comes to you and what you absorb and what you don't. And I think a correlation to that is maybe Nikola Tesla, who said that Kundalini yoga is the way to protect yourself in coming times, as well as Dr. Becker, who wrote The Body Electric. And Dr. Becker did a lot of experiments. Being a medical doctor, he did experiments breaking the legs of amphibians or chopping them off. I think what he did was he chopped them off, the legs and tails, and he developed instruments that would see the electromagnetic field of these little animals and how they grew back according to that imprint of the electromagnetic field. And Dr. Becker said that, I'm getting to what he said. He said that he felt that, well, he did experiments with people who practiced yoga as well as different shamans, and he said that people whose own electromagnetic field is very strong are not affected by the shifts in the Earth's electromagnetic field. And of course, many scientists see that the Earth's field, our electromagnetic field, is becoming more chaotic, which is usually an indication of an impending polar shift. And so if you have that strong electromagnetic field, you will be able to maintain your balance and help other people if this shift occurs in our lifetime.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I was asking because you were saying that a lot of herbalists kind of lack this ability. So it's just kind of curious how they could potentially improve to just be able to better serve.
Well, I'm sorry, you were asking a specific question. I'm giving you this whole big picture.
You're very
But,
heady,
okay.
Athena.
One thing that people can do is consciously, when people come to you and they're in pain and they want comfort or they want healing, you can take that energy of the pain and send it to the earth to be mulched, because the earth can take any kind of manure or heavy energy and turn it into beautiful, fertile earth. So the earth can absorb it. That is one thing, a simple thing that each person can do. So don't put yourself in a situation where you're resonating with them so deeply that you're absorbing people's pain. Again, send the pain and the dysfunction or whatever to the earth to be mulched and just be there in balance for that person. People, especially people who feel that they are empathic, tend to absorb other people's thoughts and their pain. And a lot of times it's because they ask. I mean, I know this because people come to me and they tell me this. Oh, I'm walking around outside and I see this person all hunched over and I feel their pain and I start wondering, what's going on in their life? And then I hear their whole life story and this. And I'll share this with you that I share with my apprentices. This is a very ancient and not well known technique for keeping yourself in balance. It is called mind your own business. Okay? You don't have any right to go around reading people's minds. It is a black magic to work on people without their permission. So
You're speaking directly to me, so I really appreciate that reminder.
yeah, I mean, if people come to you and say, I need help, I need healing, yes, then you have their permission. But don't be walking around all over the place thinking, oh, look at that poor person, they're suffering. What's the cause of their suffering? That's none of our business until people ask for your help.
Yeah, I even do that with say people that are very close to me, and unless they're asking for my help or opinion, I should just mind my own business in the meantime, because otherwise we're just causing stress and pain for the both of us.
Right, and everyone has a right to use the healing method that they resonate with, or to not heal at all. And people learn from pain. That's a human condition. And that's everyone's right to be in pain for as long as they want to.
I was just looking for this book in my backpack and I can't find it, but I just started reading The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I don't know if you're familiar with that book or not, but I know it's like kind of like a spiritual and self-help classic. For some reason, I'm just now getting to reading it for the first time. But what you're saying there kind of just reminded me of some of the teaching that I'm learning in that book.
Yeah, so it's being a healer is, many people get into it because they have a passion for it. One of my apprentices is a third generation curandera. She's from Mexico. I have, surprisingly and ironically enough, I have a lot of apprentices fly up here from Mexico to learn curanderismo from me. But that's her passion. She's wanted to do it her whole life. And she didn't feel ready until she went through the Escuela de Curanderismo. But for me, I had to be pushed into it. And I never wanted to be a healer. Some people are smart. They know what they want to do. The universe just kept shoving me.
Yeah.
And the way, and maybe other people have had this experience. I have had, I have celiac, and I was fed wheat my whole childhood, even though I would tell them I feel so sick. Afterwards, I would feel like I was going into a coma after I ate bread. And of course, so I had a series of intestinal disorders, just about everything you can have, I have. And then I had heart disease. I had a stroke in January 1st of 2000 that paralyzed my right side. And I learned, at that time I was working for NBC and I had some insurance. I went to the cardiologist and they treated me so disrespectfully and so crudely. I realized the message is you have to heal yourself. That's always been the message to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that other people don't benefit from allopathic medicine. I know a lot of people do, but it's never helped me. And so at that time, I was feeling sorry for myself because I couldn't even drive around the city I'd lived in. It's a small town. For 20 years, I couldn't find my way around. I couldn't drive. I could barely walk. And I was like, I need help. I can't heal myself this time. And then I finally realized these people are not helping you. They're making you worse. And so I found a way to heal myself from the stroke, which for me was, oddly enough, the yoga didn't help. I was doing belly dancing. And that belly dancing reintegrated both sides of my brain. I took Gotu Kola, which is usually too stimulating for me, but during that time when I had the stroke, it really helped me come back. Various other herbs to increase my circulation. And it took me a year, but I did recover fully. So, and then after that, I had cancer. So to me, these are all these pushes, because every time I would get sick, I would say, okay, what's the blessing in this?
Yeah.
You know, I know that everything around me, I know that the universe is working in my favor. What is the blessing in all of these illnesses I've had? And what I finally realized is the blessing is not only in healing myself, but in sharing those ways that I've healed with others.
I love that. You seem like
Like
a
I
really,
say, some people are smart about it. I was pretty dumb. I got pushed into it, or I wouldn't have done it.
well, the world is better off for it. So you finally learned, and now you're doing good things in the world. So I'm very curious, just selfishly, are you religious in any way? Is there a particular spiritual practice that you have, or is it kind of a few of them? I ask because I grew up in an atheist home, but I've always had a very spiritual, internal, you know, world. And I've prayed since I was a young as I can remember, like 2 years old, praying to God or the Creator. So I've experimented, as pre podcast, I was telling you, Sikhism. I've been Christian. I've done all this stuff, and um, now I'm back to praying, 2 to 3 times a day. But there's no like religion or spiritual practice associated with, other than me trying to speak directly to some sort of creator. And a lot of that has to do with me trying to help raise my self-love and self-worth, because I know that a lot of the way that I treat the world and other people is going to stem from how I treat myself. And I've always really struggled with that. So I've been back to praying again, which has been very helpful for me. But there's no like, I keep wondering, should I have some sort of spiritual practice or religious practice? And you just seem like a really good person to ask. So kind of with all that thrown at you, I don't know if you have any comments on that.
It does sound like wise words to me. How we treat ourselves has a lot to do with our relationship to the divine and to other people. I'm not religious myself. I do treat people of all different religions, and I pray for them with the name of God that they resonate with. I do have a spiritual practice. It has more to do with the practice of curanderismo. It's a nature-based spirituality, and also with Hinduism, which I never was interested in. But I mean, I hesitate to say this, but one day I was sitting and drumming, and I was rattling, and someone came and sat down in front of me, and I said, "Who are you? And are you here for my highest good?" As my teacher told me to do. And he said, "I am Vishnu." And so that has inspired me to study more about, I had to look up who is Vishnu. I really didn't know. You'd think as a Sikh, I was a Sikh for 26 years, that I would know that, but that Sikhism is a whole different religion. But
Sure.
yeah, so I've become very interested in Hinduism and practicing it and however I can. Hinduism is a very vast religion, and there's myriad practices, and it's very, Asian in that, the Western religions, it's like either or, like a Bush quote, either you're with us or you're against us. In Asian and Oriental religion, it's both and. I can be like my son's parents-in-law are both Catholic and Buddhist, and there's no problem with that. So there's just a different, different ways of looking at that.
Yeah, and I'm actually surrounded by an incredible community of people like you and lots of other herbalists. And I need to remember, oh, right, I could go out in nature and kind of have that nature religious experience. And that's another form of healing. And I'm like, oh yeah, I need to just kind of call on that more as well. But yeah, thank you for humoring me and sharing all that.
My pleasure.
Do you want to play a fun game with me where I draw a random card from here and we just get to know you a little bit better?
Okay,
We'll see how it goes. All right, I'm just
okay.
gonna draw a random card and we'll ask you this question, and we'll end with one more. Uh, where's the strangest place you've fallen asleep?
Well, let's see. I lived in a tent for 3 years,
Okay.
and I leased 300 acres, and I lived in a tent, and I had two timber wolves. They slept outside the tent, and I had a Burmese python that slept in the tent with me because, they're tropical animals, and so I would put him in a large pillowcase so he wouldn't kill me during the night, and I'd kind of wrap up the into the pillowcase and then keep him in the cover so he'd stay warm.
Athena, you've lived a very badass life, I must say. Um,
Oh,
um, well, the rules of the game is I have to answer two, and the first thing that comes to mind is not nearly as cool as yours. But when I went to the Florida Herbal Conference like 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I got into the Tampa airport, and all they had left was it was like a Dodge Charger muscle car. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to drive this to an herb conference. This is silly. Anyways, one of those nights I was driving back to the airport and I couldn't find a hotel. So I had to drive the Dodge Charger to a Walmart parking lot, and I slept in the trunk of the Dodge Charger.
in the trunk.
Yeah, because it's like a muscle car, so there's like no space anywhere, and I'm kind of a big guy, so like I had to fold down the back seats, and then I was kind of at an angle, and my head was in the trunk of the car. It was very uncomfortable night, but that's probably the strangest place I've ever slept that I could think of offhand. So yeah, like I said, not as cool as yours, but well, sweet. Let's do one more question, and that is, what is your favorite part of being an herbalist, and why? What keeps you learning and growing?
My favorite part is watching people heal, and we've had a lot of successes. I'm so grateful to my teachers and the traditions that have been handed down to me. I love seeing people heal and have the discipline to do it, because it does, as you know, natural healing does take more discipline than doing drugs, surgery, or radiation. So that's always thrilling for me.
Great answer. I also want to link to where people could find out more about you. What can you repeat your website, and I'll be sure to put that in the show notes.
Um, yeah, maybe you should put both websites.
Okay.
Because the other one they said was going away a week ago, and it's surprised every day. We go, is it still there? That is Curandera Healing. It's spelled Curandera healing.com. The new website is Ayurveda and Curanderismo, which is AYURVEDA CURANDERISMO.
Okay. Athena, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a pleasure getting to know you more, and I'm looking forward to seeing your new book get published. And yeah, you're up to some exciting things. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk with you. I'm really grateful for it.
Of course, anytime. All right. We'll talk to you in the next episode of the Herbalist Hour. Bye, everybody.